Lee Davis, blah blah, difficult upbringing, blah blah, escaped, blah, had his work published in some cool anthologies, magazines, and children's books, blah blah. Heroes are Stallone, Kuntz, Argento, and the list goes on, blah blah. Loves horror movies, outdoors, and basically all that is good in the world, blah blah. Lives in Virginia with his family, blah. See more of his work at www.leedavisbooksandart.weebly.com. Preview of Icky, coming soon by Lee Davis. Moira, get up now! You haven't been in town a week, and already you're going to start showing up late for school. I'm sorry, Mom. I forgot to get my alarm clock. Guess I shouldn't count on my body clock, huh? Just get dressed and get to school. I've got to go. Okay. Have a good day. Love you, Mom. And I love you, Moira. Get to school. Oh no, I left my homework back there. I'm gonna be so late. Maybe Mom can drive me today. Custody? Sure. Her father didn't even put up a fight. He doesn't want her any more than I do. She's worthless. She's just like her father. My dad insists I keep the account for her college fund, but how is a slob like her going to ever make anything of herself? I'm going to discourage her all the way so she drops the notion. I can put that money to something worthwhile, at least. I don't know. How should I feel? It'll be 4 years until she's out of high school. Maybe when the time comes, I can find an excuse to kick her out or sign her up for classes at the community college that I know she'll fail in. Maybe she'll give up and kill herself, save me the trouble. Happen to notice how red the new girl's eyes were there? You think we got a drug problem in our midst? Her mom came in and told Mr. Howardson how she was a problem child, to just keep her posted on any troubles. I've got her in my first class, actually. I'll keep an eye on her. Should be interesting. Unfinished. Charlotte by Lee Davis. Preview. Available on Kindle. I'm dead, aren't I? Your body is, yes. Go to sleep. It won't be dead forever. Just forget everything and dream through our world while we repair you. That's why we're on this planet, to fix you. Is she hatching? It feels like that, if nothing else. Yep, it's ruptured. She's ready to be reborn. Rip it open. She feels strong enough. Let's get her ready and get her on her way. Okay. We're done here, finally. Charlotte, take the last of our life for this world. We'll say goodbye and ascend our station. Aren't you coming? I'm not released from this body. Looks like this world has more jobs for me to tend to. I should get started figuring out what those jobs are. Goodbye for now. Who? Hey! What? Where? About the Arthur. Lee Davis was born in Virginia. He had a mustache by the time he was in 5th grade. By his early 20s, he looked like a walking carpet. He has massive back hair, but he's not going to wax it off like some narcissistic pretty boy. In the 1970s, body hair was considered masculine and sexy. Ask Burt Reynolds. He saved a mouse from his cat the other day, which proves that he's a really nice guy. His cat doesn't understand why he can't kill animals for fun. If he eats it, that's fine, but just for kicks, no way. See more of his work at www.leedavisbooksandart.weebly.com. I've always been drawn to abstract art that tells ambiguous stories where the picture is given, but the meaning is left to the viewer/reader's interpretation. Some of my favorite examples are manga by Junji Ito, the Silent Hill and Forbidden Siren games, films by David Cronenberg, David Lynch, and of course Dario Argento, who could draw you in and leave you both fascinated and perplexed. When I made the first issue of Charlotte, I thought I created an abstract picture, and the idea was to drop hints to the reader and eventually answer their questions, but make part of the fun leaving it to them to perhaps entertain ideas of what might be going on, why these bizarre things were happening. I don't hold myself to the ranks of the aforementioned maestros, but I would point out how terribly underrated Junji Ito and Dario Argento remain in the States. And by that, I mean I just don't feel there is a big demand for this kind of approach to storytelling, which is a downer for a guy like me. So I wanted to continue Charlotte, but with only a couple people hollering at me about a second issue, and with so many other things on my table, it just didn't happen. Finally, the itch to create another horror comic became too great, and I sat down to work. I wasn't sure what I wanted at first, but I knew I wanted it to take place near the beach. It clicked that I could, in a sense, make it a follow-up to Charlotte by bringing back the character of Winston, basically leaving what happened back there with Charlotte vague, but maybe we can uncover that caper in the future, who knows. With Door to Death, I love the story, I love my characters and their personas, but I'm keeping the narrative a little less ambiguous. Originally, I was going to use a former title for some horror comics I created years back, Unstitched. But though I'd say I have a stake on the title, as I published the comics as far back as 2010, there have since come out other books with this title, as well as some clothing lines. I said, oh well, and went with the simple title, Door to Death, and as I was laying the comic out, it occurred to me how the title could find its meaning in more than one way in the series. It's a corny, simple title, but I like it. Anyway, I want to thank you for taking time out to check into Door to Death, and having just wrapped this second issue, there were a couple things that stood out to me that made me wonder what was going on behind the scenes. Why is the uncle wearing a chocolate lover t-shirt, and why is his fly open? As the creator, I have ultimate authority on these questions, and after thinking it over, I have this to say. The Slug Man and Cindy, now his thrall, brought Uncle, don't know his name yet, so we'll just call him Uncle, back to Earth to reintegrate him into the population, carrying his demonic influence like an infection. Slugman is learned in human culture and society enough to know proper attire, so he and Cindy fetch him a shirt from her wardrobe in lieu of his shirt previously lost when abducted, removed from his body in anticipation of scoring with his niece in the woods. His fly is open, I suppose because they were sloppy when dressing him, though I'm not ruling out the possibility that he and Cindy did get intimate, even with Slugman's larval implantations infecting their bodies and minds. Why not? Slugman is clearly capable of looking into their minds and exploiting their knowledge and memories to help plant his infection into the lives of those around him. Are you wondering why Todd comes across as a former college prep, yet shows increasing signs of going more rock and roll? The fact is, Todd has always deep down been rock and roll, but life channeled him into a life of academia and achievement. But one day, upon losing his job and not daring to tear his family from their home in pursuit of a new career to suit his profession, he is essentially rejected by this life he has lived so long, and with the boost of Winston's arrival to town, he is finding his true self. He was never really a prep, he was only really good at living that life and made the best of it while he could. But fate has something far greater in store for him. Finally, if you enjoy this comic series, I recommend you read my Corrales Coast novel. For those that are too on the go, I promise that the audiobook will finally see publication, either through Audible or Bandcamp or both. It will shed more light on the Hive, Orange Man, the evil magicians, mutants, and all that good stuff. More background can be found in the At the Heart of Atrocity novel and the latest novella in the series, Mossy Rock Reunion Part 1, Jared. Thank you again. God bless you. Be kind. Rock on. Lee Davis, 12/8/16, 12:13 a.m.
candid narration because there are no texts. Here are pictures of me and my great friends. Many, many of them. I hope I didn't leave too many out, but of course, Josh, Jarrell, Micah, Kenny, Grandma, my wife, Manly, my daughter, of course, Emily. More Grandma, my brothers, my great dad and brothers. More scenes from the movie shoot of Old Mossy Rock. Please check it out. It's very low budget, but check it out. All of our great friends, our California friends, Jing and her children. Of course, Winley was over in California, so he's not in these, sorry. Johnny, Chris, Adrian, of course, everybody, yay!
About this honky. Lee Davis is so awesome. When he was a kid, he ran off a bunch of dogs who were terrorizing his goats and pulled one of the goats out from where it was entangled in brush in the pond. He intentionally spelled a word wrong in a spelling bee when he was in 5th grade because he didn't want the girl he was about to beat to feel bad. He's such a nice guy. There was this guy on the bus in an electronic wheelchair who didn't have a good hold, and when the bus turned sharply, the wheelchair almost turned over and Lee totally reached out and held it steady, and the man thanked him. Isn't that so nice? Doesn't it make you want to tell everybody how great he is, and that they should all buy his comics and books and movies, and even if they're not totally impressed, how they should give 5-star reviews and glowing feedback on Amazon? There are probably all kinds of people who are not as nice and cool and awesome of a guy as Lee is that get all kinds of positive reviews on Amazon. So really cool people should help balance things out and give Lee all kinds of free publicity. If he was ever rude to you during his days as an angry teenager, he sends his sincere apologies. Please don't hold it against me. I mean against him, because he is not me, the guy writing this. I am some other guy. Have you ever played Deadly Premonition? It's such an awesome game. See more of Lee's work at www.leedavisbooksandart.weebly.com. I have to admit, halfway through creating this issue of Door to Death, I was thinking my author's note would be an apology/explanation of why and how it had become so similar to my Corrales Coast novel. There are some repetitive elements for sure, but suddenly the story took an unexpected turn and veered away from familiar territory and did something I didn't see coming, which to me succeeded in becoming a proper continuation and not a rehash. Other elements to demonstrate how this happened will be played out later. Basically, the pieces all fell into place. That's not uncommon when I'm creating a story. Each time I take on a project like this, it's my greatest pleasure when suddenly the story is taking control, and it's as if I'm sitting back and just letting the alternate universe take control of my hands as I'm laying out the vision. In the beginning stage, I plot out characters, locales, and situations, and there's some tricky business in getting the gears running, and sometimes I'm worried that I'll hit a wall. But that's about the time where the gears really start working at full capacity, and it's as if I've given life to a machine that starts working for me and takes some of the pressure off of the endeavor. Does that make sense? Anyway, all this isn't to say that I think the story here is the most amazing, phenomenal thing in the world, but I can say it's a story I'm happy with, and that is true to my heart, and that's good enough for me. Beyond that satisfaction, I still very much hope that it works for you as well. I really, really hope you're getting some enjoyment out of this. I've talked about this in some of the videos I've made for the Door to Death Facebook page, but to reflect a little about the illustrations, this is a very gratifying job, illustrating this title, as I'm sticking with my approach that has ebb and flow in the level of detail, going with my gut on where to lighten the detail and diving in when I want to broaden the dimension. There's one page that has such simple lines, and I'll admit is a mighty lazy page, but in this case, this is exacerbated by the fact that I was practically falling asleep as I illustrated. But I'd rather leave it as it was in the moment, and I see no need to add extra detail. I'd also stress that with no strings attached to this title, being purely independent, there's no pressure on me to stress over a page to the point where creating becomes a drag or feels too much like work, if you get me. Lee Davis, January 31st, 2017. Mars Homeworld is a great gentleman and a great friend. Having said that, where in the world is he? Here's hoping that whatever he's up to, that he's doing well. Mars gave me some great encouragement when I was just finally starting to see my work get out there a little bit, and later would be one of my greatest allies as I finally made my dream come true of creating my own cheesy indie horror film. A veteran of indie film himself, having directed Transcendent and scoring several horror films and even the H.P. Lovecraft documentary with his phenomenal musical skills, he guided me and answered my questions about the technical side of editing and gear. And then when I asked if he wanted to contribute a song to the micro-budget project, he created several on the spot and even gave me several others from his archive. Mossy Rock was my debut film, and on its sequel, I asked if Mars would use his great ominous voice for the opening narration in Old Mossy Rock. I put Mars into the category of creators who was breathing life into the world of fantasy with his passion, enthusiasm, and his incredible gifts. Where he and I shared some of our frustrations in dealing with people who would show up when they could use you for something to help them out personally, selfishly. Those latter people come and go, and sometimes really burn a creator out when he or she feels taken advantage of. But we remember the outstanding friends who helped, guided, and encouraged us. Mars at one point proposed we combine forces on a comic project, and of course I immediately said yes, primarily because this was the guy so helpful to me. But there is also the fact that he is so talented and visionary. His idea was to have a young metal band reaching for their dream while being unwittingly steered by an occultist, hoping to use their musical passion as means to unlock a door to an evil dimension. If you've seen Deathgasm, then this might sound familiar, but for the record, Mars created this story some years before that great film's release. It's a coincidence, and not an unlikely one. In the movie The Gate, there is a metal album that helps open the portal, and besides, so many medical bands explore the occult. The idea of some band actually breaking the barrier is fun and makes sense. Mars and I are both, by the way, bonded in our love for death metal and your basic underground cult music. The following pages are the only elements ever created for this title, Elder God. Mars, let's finish an issue. Lee. Earth, the future. Earth, present day. Look at that guitar. I think Hayden would really shred on that beauty. It would make the band sound much fuller. Why does gear have to cost so damn much? You could always ask your dad for the money to buy it. Very funny. You know that's never gonna happen. I know, baby. Don't worry. You guys will make it on your own. You just have to believe that. Believe as strongly as I do. Adam Waitley, or Oracle, age 20. Adam is the voice and frontman for Elder God, the band raised up from the ashes of Degraver. Once the influence of the old ones begins to haunt Adam's nightly dreams, promising fame and fortune. He is a rebellious child who has turned away from his wealthy upbringing to pursue his dream of fronting a successful rock band. Little does he know that his own family has ancestral ties to the ancient secrets, and that bond may in fact go much deeper than he could imagine. Constance de Maria, or Circe, age 18. Constance is the girlfriend of Adam and his constant companion. She believes in him completely and does a lot of the grunt work for the band in terms of admin duties on their web presence/social media sites. She also pays the couple's rent. She is far from stupid and is aware that Adam needs a prodding here and there to rise to his own potential, and the manner in which she goes about this is somewhat sneaky if need be. Her subterfuge is not lost on the band, particularly Hayden, who views her with more than a little mistrust. But they know she is what keeps Adam on track, so for now, they are silent in their opposition to her. When Degraver becomes Elder God, she will be dubbed Circe and become the band's keyboardist despite a complete lack of musical experience on the instrument. Gregor Marshall, or Crom, age 21. Gregor is the bassist and the band's self-appointed guardian when it comes to keeping the band true.
He is the most concerned with reading metal forums, and he always seems to have new metal releases before anyone else. He's extremely opinionated and quick to judge an idea based on its cult relevance as opposed to thinking of it from musical terms. This wears very thin with Hayden's more progressive writing tendencies, and the two often butt heads. Gregor is an anomaly as musicians go. Having had the same job since his teens, he has a strong work ethic and respects Constance's insistence that the band should work harder to achieve their goals. He also has a not-so-secret crush on her and tends to side with her suggestions quickly, another needle in Hayden's side. Hayden Fisher, or Vorgilak, age 25. Hayden is the guitarist and principal songwriter for Elder God. He is a few years older than the rest of the band and has been in the music scene longer. This contributes to an air of self-confidence that is often perceived as arrogance. He is a solid guitarist, though not a virtuoso by any means. He oftentimes finds himself at odds with the bassist Gregor about the style of the music, but being a guitarist, he almost always wins the arguments. Whether this is actually doing the band morale any good is another story. Aaron McDonough, or Lord Reaper, age 16. Aaron is the youngest member of Elder God, but curiously, he is the most proficient musician, although he's actually a better saxophonist than a drummer. And this is why the band overlooks his constant joking and tendency toward immaturity. He still lives at home and has been raised as something of a musical prodigy, dividing his time between advanced music courses at the local junior college and getting drunk after Elder God rehearsal. He's always first to take a joke too far and is the guy who will think nothing of pooping his drawers at a party. He loves a party and a pretty girl in whatever order he can get them. Elder God. The story follows a young extreme metal band on their journey from unknown act to world-renowned attraction, who also happen to be the messengers of the Great Old Ones. Using the dreams of vocalist Adam Waitley, aka Oracle, as a guide, the band experiences an unparalleled success in a short period of time. While to the band, the progress and subsequent recognition is welcomed, they are too preoccupied in living out their dream to really ask just why the band is doing so well. In reality, the dreams are being sent to Adam directly from Lord Cthulhu via telepathy, and the band's invisible backer is in fact the Hermetic Order of the Silver Twilight, one of the most powerful secret societies on Earth. Mars Homeworld is the founder of Dead House Music and composer of soundtracks for many independent horror films. He has appeared as a feature speaker at numerous horror events alongside genre legends such as Tony Todd, Tony Moran, Lloyd Kaufman, Debbie Rochon, veteran composers Richard Band and Stephen Parsons, with many appearances yet to come. www.deadhousemusic.com. Lee Davis is a writer and illustrator of comics, children's books, and horror. His comics have appeared regularly in Strange Eons magazine. He has illustrated children's books for horror novelist Scott Nicholson, among others. His fiction has appeared in several anthologies, including Torn Realities, which featured Clive Barker as the big-name author, blah, blah, blah. www.leedavisbooksandart.weebly.com. About Lee Davis. Lee Davis was born in Virginia. He kicks it old school with his friends. Recently, his pal Jarrell hooked it up to meet Tony Todd, who was a hella cool guy, and said Lee looked like the type to be an undercover cop, which Lee took as a compliment. Tony was very kind to Lee's daughter too, who was too young to watch Candyman. This was at Mysticon in Roanoke, Virginia, where thanks to Sean Walton, Lee's films were premiered to a huge audience. Okay, not really huge. He appears regularly at Roanoke Valley Comic-Con, thanks to the Garbies. Lee, who is definitely not the guy writing this biography, I'm this stylish California guy who lives in the Bay Area and eats avocados, is very thankful to his friends who have helped him with his movies and publishers who gave him a shot. Lee recently got the Blu-ray of Don't Kill It with Dolph Lundgren. He hasn't finished watching it, but it is awesome. He also watched Solace with Anthony Hopkins, which was totally righteous. Dean Koontz rules. See more of Lee's work at www.leedavisbooksandart.weebly.com. Obsession. I could write a book about the many blockades I hit growing up pursuing my dreams, but for here and now, I'll try to put it all in a nutshell. Growing up, I became determined to create works in various artistic mediums. I hit confrontation from the people around me harboring the painfully false notion that these dreams were the only things in life I intended to pursue. Utterly untrue. Teachers and general busybodies were quick to strike down my ambitions and cast negative light over them in any way possible. I was in my early teens when I finally gave in to the negative voices and general assaults on my dreams, and the void left in the absence of these dreams and goals gave birth to nihilism, nastiness, and a self-destructive lifestyle. I remember my epiphany when I was 22, like a light going on, sparked by my discovery of some choice alternative comics. I realized that the voices shouting down my dreams with the utmost negativity had been the actual destructive forces, not the other way around. But the kind of complications, one of which was being terribly out of practice after so many years of stagnation, that awaited would still serve as significant obstacles in merely getting back on track with my ambitions and taking control of the crafts. Most of my 20s involved the uphill struggle of getting my abilities up to a certain standard, and amazingly, I still faced some absurd adversity to these artistic desires. I mean, there were still people ripping at a simple desire to make some comics, fiction, and movies. Incidentally, this is a big part of why I become frustrated with people who have easy access to creative tools and resources, and more than anything, some positive, encouraging voices never take for granted, whether giving or receiving, and for some reason or another produce nothing or almost nothing. Moving along, in the course of my 20s there grew a list of projects that I obsessed over, but the list was growing faster than my abilities or creating time could keep up with, and it was making my head spin. How can I ever catch up? I was reacquainted with the kinds of frustrations and feelings of helplessness I dealt with in my teens, but this time I was not defeated. Now here I am, and what I call my creative bucket list is so close to finished. Creating Door to Death, regardless of how it's received by the world, is a giant milestone for me, added with the kind of weight I felt lift from my shoulders after creating my movies, despite the kind of complications I was faced with. It's a fantastic feeling, and with each project that removes more weight from my soul, it further clears the field for the world around me, and permits me that much more freedom to explore. I am terribly late to my destination, but I'm here, and that's good enough for me. I want to create more film, comics, and fiction, but it will come with the sweet liberation of knowing I've completed the basic list. Full-on passion with a release from the obsession. Take on projects as they come. I do want to live this life for a while longer, and now, as a father, I hope to stay on this plane of existence for at least another 20 years. It's a great feeling to finally look forward to life and what I can bring to the world, where not too long ago I hoped I might die around the age of 40, if just to be done with the burn of disenchantment and abandon and ridicule. This issue. I'm giddy at this point with Door to Death. I've had so much fun creating this title for so many reasons. This issue was interesting to me because I took to task of converging characters and storylines from the fiction, At the Heart of Atrocity, Corrales Coast, and Mossy Rock Reunion, and the movies, Mossy Rock and Old Mossy Rock, which was tricky but too much fun. Anybody dealing with bringing new readers up to speed on a back catalog of this size is tasked with keeping things coherent while integrating key elements. I won't claim I did stellar work, but I'll maintain that it was the kind of challenge I sincerely enjoy. I will say my instincts are to stick to basics with key characters and elements. Avoid making it too convoluted too quickly. This meant leaving out some characters that weren't essential, like Lincoln Cabretti, who I portrayed in the films. I suppose he's off on a bender trying to find a woman. Which brings me to the final topic of this creative journal entry. Autobiographical characters. There was no conscious attempt to make Winston an autobiographical character. There rarely is with me, but I don't deny when similarities happen. Originally with Winston, named to pay tribute to Winston Churchill and the Ghostbuster, portrayed by Ernie Hudson, I was inspired by Rupert Everett in Cemetery Man, aka Delamorte Delamore, but thought the character should be less perfect and more real. Not in perfect shape, not as pretty, in need of a shave, and unconcerned with body waxing. If somehow this has morphed into an almost comic version of me, then cool. I wouldn't say it is or isn't, but I'll say if it is, it's not intentional. But one friend basically said, "So that's you," as soon as he saw the first appearance of Winston in Door to Death issue 1. For Winston's backstory, I was inspired by stories of child actors / young artists who faced difficult lives after their fame had faded. But more than that, by their perseverance after the fall. I can say this does link with the experience I had at 12 when I was taken from a nurturing environment where I felt loved and appreciated and got to know a life of rejection and ridicule. But also like Winston, I survived and lived my dreams despite these tribulations. I am stronger for it and thank God for it. Lee Davis, April 5th, 2017. About this friggin' guy. Lee Davis was born in Virginia. He's proud to be an American. He is spastic and has anxiety issues, but uses these quirks for the powers of good. It is possible. He drinks coffee, so he has to use the restroom a lot. Don't laugh. He loves the beach and has watched the entire series of Magnum P.I., best show in existence. He has the same birth date as Sylvester Stallone. The Rocky to Sun speech is one of the most inspirational moments in cinema history in Lee's opinion. Some gossipy yuppies look at Lee with disdain and ignore him like he's a reject before they talk endlessly about lawn care and stoke their egos over petty, materialistic nonsense. Odd. Lee loves his friends and family. See more of Lee's work at www.leedavisbooksandart.weebly.com. This past month has been crazy. My obsession to wrap this first collection of Door to Death, scrambling to squeeze in as much creating as I can as soon as my daughter has gone to sleep, the consequent sleep deprivation. Having this completed is a fantastic release, just in time for the warm weather. You may have noticed this issue ran 32 pages opposed to the standard 22. As this completes the first full story, which could be the equivalent of a first feature-length movie, I was tasked with tying up the loose ends, and there was just too much going on to wrap in the standard length. This happens when I write a novel, and a goal word count of 80,000 becomes 1,000. This is the stretch where I'm overwhelmed with excitement, but the task of wrapping makes my head spin, cranks the gears in my brain until I'm mentally exhausted. It may not seem like much, but balancing several branches of a story and bouncing from one to the other is as tiring as it is rewarding. Looking back, I remember starting this title, not really knowing what it would be, but knowing I wanted monsters and zombies and the beach. It fit into place that it tied in with the novels and movies I've made. Laura, my great friend and producer of the Old Mossy Rock indie film, and I had talked at length of making a promotional comic to go along with the films and serve as a cool side story. I didn't know when I began Door to Death, but the series has served that purpose. I couldn't be happier. Also, when my protagonist appeared, I didn't at the time know he would end up being the same man from the Charlotte comic, which explains why he looks a little different. I guess he's been taking better care of himself. In both cases, I was inspired by Rupert Everett's look, but plainer and rougher. I confess that when I'm starting a comic after a period of not illustrating, I'm not really on point with my illustration style for characters. And a small part of me regrets that the illustration quality wasn't quite there in the earlier issues, but at the same time I kept this project at a pace that kept it mostly a pleasurable experience, something true and on the spot, where my head was at the time, and with no pressure to worry over excessive detail, so it's all good. As it goes, however, the longer I worked, the more alive it became to me, and the deeper I fell into the universe embodied in the pages. All this isn't to sound as though I've accomplished some outstanding feat through this work, but it's sincerely what the experience was like to me. I've spoken about how the story, at some point, gains its own life, takes control, and you just let it work itself out, borrowing your hands to put it all down. You're still operating the machinery, so it wears you out, but wow, I recall the point somewhere around issue 3 when the climactic scenarios just burst into my head, as if sent to me, and I was thrilled and desperate to catch the story up to that conclusion. Incredible experience, which leads me to some details that you may be wondering about. You might be asking yourself, why was all the trouble spent in getting Winston on the scene when in the end he wasn't the one to give the death blows to some of those mammoth monsters? Well, the clearest answer I have is that the story is clearly not done, and his role in all of it is far from over. Besides that, you might consider how in life all of these little things can come together to enable victory. Had he not been there, he would not have led Todd to Corrales Coast, who in turn gave the death blow, so to speak, to Cindy. Ginny may not have gotten out of the Hive's pit without that extra hand. These are things to consider in the chain of events. It's all kind of cool to think about, how in a way it translates to real life. You saw the ad for my Patreon page. Indeed, with this huge project done, I'm elated to be at a point where this can become a creative agenda, to do some pages here and some pages there, to be released along with my other artistic offerings. These issues have laid the groundwork, and the story can be built up in casual, cool, gory installments. Yes. I'd like to continue other comic titles of mine like Cranberry Death Sauce, Gross, and some experimental horror titles. I'll also be putting up whatever music, film, or fiction works I create, and I'm looking forward to finally getting some of my audiobooks out there. Thank you all for checking this out. Much love and stay tuned. Lee Davis, May 5th, 2017, 3:17 p.m.